So I'd like to call the Budget Review Committee to order. It's June 27th, 2022. We're in the Aldermatic Chamber and via Zoom. The meeting ID and password can be found online on the agenda. And I believe we have everyone on the committee. So could you do a roll call?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alderman at Large Larry Wilshire.
Here.
Alderman John Sullivan is absent. Alderman at Large Shoshana Kelly.
Here.
Alderman Ernest Jetty.
Here.
Alderman John Cathy.
Present.
Alderman at Large Michael O'Brien is present, and our chairman, Alderman Richard A. Dowd.
Present. Okay. So, next item on the agenda is communications. Oh, public comment. There's nobody. Is there anyone on Zoom that would like to do public comment? Seeing no one, there's no one in the chamber, so moving on.
To communications from Laurie Adelano. Reason, interest paid for abatement appeals not settled expeditiously. Other communication from Lisa Foto, Director of Public Works. Reason, referral from the Board of Aldermen on R-22-038.
There being no objection, I will accept the communication and place them on file. Unfinished business,
There is none.
new business resolutions.
Mr. Chairman, before us this evening is R-22-038, which is authorizing the mayor and the city treasurer to issue bonds not to exceed the amount of $2,450,000 for Walnut Street Oval intersection project and West Pearl Street streetscaping. Mr. Chairman, I would like to make the motion to recommend final passage.
Motion is to recommend final passage of R-22-038. Is there anyone that would like to have any discussion? Alderman
Yes, thank you. So since we're in Budget Committee now, I have a couple of more questions for Director Cummings, if I could.
You can come up if you want to, so you don't have to stand at the podium if you don't want to.
Happy to, whatever you'd like.
It's up to you. Afraid somebody's gonna steal your power cord?
Yeah, well, just in case my battery dies.
All right, questions for
Yeah,
Director Cummings?
just a couple of quick questions, and thank you for indulging me. So again, my understanding of the project was that the ultimate goal was the reversal of West Pearl Street, and it seems like, I understand that we can't reverse it until we redo that intersection, so there's an order of operations that has to happen. But I'm just wondering why the last step in the proposal that we talked about in infrastructure, why the last step isn't the reversal of Pearl Street. It seemed like we were all pretty much on board with that. And if it's a matter of analyzing traffic patterns, do we not already know how many cars come off the Broad Street Parkway? They're just going down Factory Street instead of Pearl Street, but that traffic data already exists. Have we not already done that study before we started to entertain the idea of reversing? Because we can't count how many cars are going to come down it once it's reversed until we reverse it. So didn't we already do a study to determine whether reversing was feasible in the first place?
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Yes, we did. We did, as I understand it, because it all predates me, these studies were done back in the 2013, 2015, 2010, 2008 type timeframe. And it was done, as I understand it, in the lead up of the parkway being constructed, and then it was done after the parkway was constructed. There was some preliminary design study done to evaluate the idea of reversing West Pearl Street. But when I say preliminary study, it hasn't been brought to a level yet where I believe the city engineer feels comfortable in actually moving anything forward in terms of a reversal.
All set, or follow-up?
Oh, I guess I'm just confused. If we're not sure that we're going to reverse the road, then why do the infrastructure needed to reverse the road in the first place? I thought that was a foregone conclusion.
Director Cummings?
Yes, again, when I say that the reversal of West Pearl Street is a priority, that is what's been represented to me by the Board of Aldermen over the last 4 or 5 years, as well as others in the community. I would suggest that is separate and apart from actually the need to do the West Pearl Street streetscaping, because that infrastructure is old and needs to be rehabilitated because it's beyond its useful life. If you were to take a look at that roadway, we have not gotten to the point of actually designing the squaring off of the oval. When I say that the intersection of Walnut, Central, and West Pearl is going to be a full intersection, that's because of the very preliminary data that we got back from the engineers when they looked at it, and they said, city, if you ever do want to reverse West Pearl Street, you need to be aware of this is going to be an impact that you're going to need to consider and be aware of. And so I fully expect when we do the Walnut Street squaring off, that will be one of the inputs that actually gets decided that we actually undertake. And at the end of the day, if it rises that folks don't want to reverse West Pearl Street, then you'd still do the reintegration of the street grid with the squaring off of the Walnut Street oval. You'd still, I would recommend, do the West Pearl Street streetscaping. What would occur most likely, my guess is, the intersection configuration at that Walnut, Central, and West Pearl Street area would just not look what it might need to look like if you were to reverse West Pearl Street.
Last thing then, if we do this and we don't immediately reverse it and life goes on with Pearl Street going in the same direction that it's going now, will it be significantly more difficult to reverse it later?
No, that's, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
No, that's one of the things that the West Pearl Street streetscaping took into
I mean, the
consideration.
intersection itself, the infrastructure of the intersection, will that be difficult to reverse?
Which intersection?
Walnut and Central and Pearl.
I don't know because we haven't designed that yet. However, I would make it a priority to preserve the options so you could. So, and what do I mean by that? I would want to make sure that the land is available, and so you had enough right-of-way planned. So if you needed to accommodate additional improvements 5, 10, 15 years down the road, in case someone decides to reverse West Pearl Street and actually undertake that project, you wouldn't have to redo everything.
Okay, thank you. I was just hoping we don't have to rip the whole thing up and start over.
Having been around for those studies, I think that it wasn't an issue on that end. I think the issue was on Main Street and Pearl Street. And it was my understanding, and this is also going to be a question, that you have to turn all the lights around and you have to affect the timing of the intersection. Is that cost included in this?
No, that
So
cost would not be included.
That would definitely need to be done before you can reverse the streets. So do you have a follow-up or?
Well, no, that's why I'm just, I was under the understanding that the reversal was part of the project, so it's news to me that we're gonna revisit that later, that's all.
Alderman O'Brien?
Yeah, thank you. From what I remember being in many infrastructure committees and Mr. Cummings, some of this, you said it's a phased project. And so this will probably be definitely looked at least when we're doing from Elm Street to Walnut Street, because that's when it's going to really become mission incredible. But right now, physically, a car cannot get off the oval and to get on Pearl Street. There may be futuristic negotiations. Some of the property has changed hands. There's been selling. It's under new tenants and everything else. So I think the picture is all part of the puzzle has yet to be put together through negotiations and trying to get this squared off and correct. So I think that's going to be done subsequently, and I'm sure, Mr. Cummings, this will come back to infrastructure where the finalization to make the final recommendation to the board on this matter.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Director Cummings?
I just want to say, I apologize. I thought I had made it clear that the West Pearl Street streetscaping had always been designed to accommodate the future reversal of West Pearl Street. And so if I didn't make that clear early on, I apologize. But all I was trying to emphasize is that this streetscaping and this work on West Pearl Street anticipated and would be designed in a way to be as efficient as possible. And I would suggest that would be the exact same thing that would be done with the Walnut Street squaring off.
So again, I think the biggest thing in reversing the street would be the intersection of the lighting switch around on Main Street and Pearl Street and the timing. And perhaps because it would reduce pollution, there might be federal funds available to do that at some point. Just a thought. Any other questions? Alderman Kathy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Cummings, having not been here a super long amount of time, and maybe for others' edification as well, what are the benefits to squaring off the oval? What are the problems that we have now? I've been around that oval, but I haven't encountered a lot of my own problems. So what benefit do we get?
Sure, if I may, Mr.
Yes.
Chair. So that is, I get excited when I get a question like that. It just shows you I'm an urban planning geek. That is a great example of urban renewal gone awry. And so that is not a very pedestrian-friendly area in Nashua that we really should be looking to reintroduce the street grid to accommodate pedestrians, multimodal transportation. Introducing the street grid would be just safer from a public safety standpoint. But also, it would actually create potentially some development opportunities because you'd be accessing land right now that is undevelopable and potentially being able to turn land back to the tax rolls and try to spur additional infill type development. Wouldn't be large scale by any imagination, by any stretch, but it would be potentially some opportunity to bring the land back into some more productive use.
Follow-up?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If, out of my own curiosity, would this affect the Penachuk building at all? Would there be, or is it, are they gonna lose land, gain land? I don't know how much of that oval that they actually own, so I'm just curious about
Director
that.
Cummings?
Sure. Well, first, just to clarify, they don't own anything. They lease it. But to your point, though, the landowner, depending on how the city owns that land, I don't want to get too technical, but if we have a fee interest, it would revert to the city. If it's just some sort of right-of-way usage, then that would, depending on where the center line is, revert to the owner that had the fee. So yes, there's a strong possibility, particularly on the most southerly end of the oval, that some of that land would revert back to the private property owner that abuts it. To the land to the north, actually, I believe the city actually has a lot of fee interest from basically the 25 Walnut Street, which is the Penachuk building, around the Factory Street area to the clock tower. So that would be city property that, again, I think might be a potential opportunity for a development. And then if the private owner wanted to develop along the southern end, that's a conversation to be had.
Thank you.
The only thing I can state is, having heard it several times, the Penachuk's highly in favor of this. Alderman Kathy, did you have a follow-up?
I'm good, thank you.
Alderman Como?
I promise this will be my last one. If the plan hasn't been developed yet, how do we know how much to finance?
Oh, yeah, Director Cummings?
Thank you. Great question, because we have engineers looking at it, doing very high-level studies to give us cost estimates, but specifically, actually, for the squaring off of the Walnut Street Oval, we are precluded, because we'll be taking federal funds, to actually designing it until we actually receive the funds and have what's referred to as an LPA agreement with the state. They don't want you to prejudge an issue to solve a problem. They want it to be, they look at it as being fair and equitable. So they give you a budget that they believe is appropriate, and then you actually study the issue, design it to a certain degree, then you reassess to actually see if that budget that was originally set out is accurate.
as usual, a perfectly reasonable explanation. Thank you.
Alderman Kathy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we can't design it because of the state, right?
You can't design it just yet.
Right.
But you will design it in theory in the next year or so.
When do we get those monies? Question number one. Question number two, do we have to have this resolution in order for them to give us the money, like sort of like a good faith sort of thing, or would they give it to us anyway?
Oh, Director Cummings?
Yes, so I'm going to answer your question a couple ways. It's a reimbursement, so they reimburse us after we spend it. I would never recommend that the city of Nashua enter into an agreement with the state when we owe 20% of the project and not have the money available as a source of funds. That's what I would suggest would be a bad practice.
It's not too dissimilar to what we get involved with the airport, where the federal government pays 90%, the state pays 5%, we pay 5%. All the legislation has to be in place before the federal government trusts you to go through with the project.
Are we paying that, we're paying that money first for the airport and getting reimbursed? Or are they
No,
paying the bill?
It works a little different.
Okay.
They want all the money up front,
Okay, thank you.
especially when they're paying 90% of it. Alderman Jettie?
Thank you. So, you know, just to clarify, you know, there are two parts to this. One is the Walnut Street streetscape, and the other is the oval. As far as the Walnut Street part of it, I looked at the, you know, the capital improvements plan for fiscal year '23, and they only, you know, when I pull up the plan, all I see is, you know, the Walnut Street, there's only like, you know, 30,000 or so that's put in there. So I'm thinking maybe it was amended, you know, after this. It says FY '23, but, you know, the amount that you're talking about is 1.895 million. So how did it go from 30,000 to 1.895? Is there something missing there?
If I may, Mr. Chair,
Director Cummings?
I'm gonna guess, because I don't know for sure, because I didn't do it. But I believe our DPW department submitted the request, and they did it well in advance of actually knowing if this money was actually gonna come forward or not. And so I believe they probably put in some money for, most likely the design. So.
Yeah, it does say design, yeah.
So that's probably a partial request, whereas because we're moving forward with the project, we're asking for the entirety of it to be authorized.
Okay, and may I
Follow
continue? And the Capital Improvements Committee, as you know, but for anyone else, you know, there's A, B, C, D, and this was in the B area. So there are a lot of projects that are in the A area that this is jumping ahead of. So how do you justify that?
Director Cummings?
Yeah, I don't know if I do justify that. I am not responsible for that ranking system. I didn't even know that this got ranked as a B. I'm not even sure what the criteria would be to rank this compared to the other projects at hand. I'm sure all projects are worthwhile though and need to be done.
I think it also has to do with monies that are going to be coming forward under the capital improvements budget versus a separate bond. I've seen a lot of things over the years that are ranked in the Bs or low Bs that get funded because the project becomes more viable than when it was presented to the, I can't say for sure because I wasn't there, but it's happened before. And as far as I'm concerned, I think we ought to fund all the A projects, but we don't have enough money. So in this instance, it looks like one of the B projects rose to the top.
I can
Well-
find, if I may, Mr. Chair, I can absolutely find out and get back to you, but I'm not intimately familiar with the capital improvements plan, but I'll look into it and get back to you.
Okay. And so if I may continue.
Follow up?
Talking about the traffic reversal plan, I agreed, I was under the same impression as a previous speaker that, that there was a study done a number of years ago that recommended the reversal of our current one-way system for the limited area of West Pearl Street, but it included, changing the direction of West Pearl Street to allow access from the Broad Street Parkway. But also, it talked about reversing the direction of East Pearl Street. So you'd have, eastbound traffic going from the Broad Street Parkway across Main Street down, West and East Pearl Street to Temple Street, and then coming westerly, Temple Street would then become westerly across Main Street. Factory Street would be westerly and going back to Chestnut Street, and then to Central Street back to the Parkway. And I thought that was all, the studies were done, that was the recommendation. The only thing standing in the way was the cost. So when you talk about further studies being necessary, I'm wondering, how many studies do we have to do? It's coming up with the money that's the problem, isn't it?
Director Cummings?
I would say that that's one of the problems. Gaining consensus with the community is another one to make sure everyone is in agreement. I'll give you an example. That study that you're referencing makes it very clear that we should actually abandon Water Street. It says it's unnecessary. We shouldn't have it. I think that there's some people who would suggest that that is not the best conclusion. Public safety in particular. But nonetheless, that is what that study says. And so oftentimes you have a lot of studies before there is enough confidence and data to move forward with one prevailing thought. The study you're specifically referencing, for those of you who don't know, it's on our city website. It's called the Downtown Circulation Study. It was done back in 2015 by VHB, and actually has a lot of differing recommendations in that document about what the city could do to improve the flow of vehicles and traffic in the downtown area, because you're absolutely right. One of the things that the professional staff will recommend is to move away from one-way type of circulation.
All said, Alderman Jettie?
Yeah, okay, that last part was, it came as a surprise. We're talking about reversing direction, and now you're talking about making the streets two ways instead of one ways. Is that what you just said?
Director Cummings?
Yes, again, a big component of that study, the major thrust of that study was to actually try to move away from one-way traffic flow and try to institute two-way traffic flow where possible.
Okay.
Which was an even more expensive option, by the way.
And a loss of parking.
Great. Lots of parking. Any other questions? Seeing none, the motion on the floor is to recommend final passage of R 22-038. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. All right. Next, we'll move on to R-22-042, Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before us this evening is R 22-042, relative to the supplemental appropriations of $320,000 from fiscal year 2022, assigned fund balance into Department 152 Fire, account number 51330, shift coverage. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to recommend final passage.
Okay, the motion on the floor is to recommend final passage of R-22-042. I'll open up for discussion. Alderman O'Brien, you have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I just come to some knowledge that, from what I understand, that there seems to be this number here that is for on this motion may be not enough. So therefore, I would like to amend the motion to read, instead of $320,000, to include it to the dollar amount of $355,000.
And Ms. Evans is online. Would you like to explain why the larger number, Ms. Evans? Rose? You're on mute. There we go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Rose Evans, Comptroller. This Thursday is our last payroll of the fiscal year. And we ran the payroll numbers today, and they were higher than we had originally anticipated when we put forth the first amount of $320,000.
Weren't we also?
Can you hear me, Ms.?
I can now. Weren't we also expecting some FEMA monies that may come in later but aren't going to come in before this week? Or did they change the way that?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. At which point, well, there's a couple of items. I was on the phone with FEMA this week, and they will not cover overtime to cover somebody that was sick with COVID. And we were under the impression that they were going to cover that. Lo and behold, they're not. So that's part of it. We are anticipating eligible FEMA recovery for, other eligible costs, but they're not going to come in this fiscal year.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Alderman Goldman?
We should have let the chief go first. This is an easy one. No disrespect, Director Cummings.
He's not getting paid by the hour. All right, so the motion on the floor, if there's no other discussion?
Well, first this is the amendment.
Oh, this is the amendment, so. All in favor of the amendment, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We will now have the amended R-22-042, where it'll read, relative to the supplemental appropriation of $355,000 from FY 2022 assigned fund balance into Department 152 Fire Account 51330 shift coverage. Any discussion on the amended motion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now you can go fight fires, chief.
Pass it.
Yeah. All right, let's see. Next item is new business ordinances.
There are
We
none.
only voted on the amendment.
No,
Oh, you did both.
We just did it.
no, we both.
Right, sorry. I must have been asleep.
I didn't vote on either. I'm not on this committee.
Just come here.
Oh, okay, so there was no new business, table in committee, none. General discussion? Seeing none. Public comment? Nobody in the chamber? Anyone on Zoom? Public comment? No? No public comment. Remarks by Alderman? None? Alderman O'Brien?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to make a motion that the Budget Review Committee of June 27th, 2022 be adjourned.
Motion on the floor is to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're adjourned at 8:03.
Abstain.